Secretary, thank you for joining us today. It's been a monumental day in the election campaign. Is it fair to say that this is pretty much Rishi Sunak's worst nightmare coming to bear?
I don't think the idea that there are other candidates in an election is that at all, other than to say if people care about some of the things that Rishi Sunak passionately cares about, including, for example, ensuring that we can control our own borders. And we've spent many months legislating to be able to do exactly that against tooth and nail resistance from Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, voting against us 136 times. And the worst thing possible for somebody to do, if they care about those sort of things, is to vote for reform, because it would lead to Starmer absolutely undoing all of that. He's no intention of tackling illegal migration through changing the law at all. So that'd be the worst thing possible if you care about those things.
I suppose many people will think that Keir Starmer might not be the toughest on migration matters, but they might find it hard to believe a Conservative Party that hasn't been able to stop the boats. They were down by a third last year, of course, but this year they're back up again by a third. And of course, we've seen record high legal migration too. Why should people believe you?
We know for a fact that Keir Starmer says he doesn't even want to use a scheme like the Rwanda scheme. In fact, he'd scrap it, even if it was working. And the point here is that we've painstakingly legislated for, always with the objection of Labour voting against us 136 times, to put a scheme in place which is ready to go. So we've got a scheme ready to operate, and the danger is now...
And yet your Prime Minister called an election before that scheme could get going. Doesn't that perhaps betray his lack of confidence in his own scheme?
Well, no, look, only the Prime Minister will be able to give the detail, but you call an election for a whole bunch of reasons, not just on a single policy, obviously, and to give people the choice. And I think the thing that I do know that the Prime Minister felt very strongly, and this does seem to me to be self-evidently true, is you've got Keir Starmer standing on the sidelines, sniping constantly, never telling you what Labour would do. Even today, for example, he's gone out and said, don't worry, you can trust us on defence. Well, that's odd. Tonight, his shadow deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has come out and said she hasn't changed her mind on defence at all. In other words, she's still basically against Trident, against our nuclear deterrent. So, you know, I do not know. I simply don't know what Keir Starmer really believes in. It isn't stopping the boats. It isn't being sound
Angela Rayner has said
defense.
that she's in favour of long-term disarmament, but is backing the policy of renewing Trident in the short term, to be fair.
Well, hold on. You can't just walk away from the fact that 12 or 13 members of the shadow front bench, so that's Keir Starmer's top team, voted against, including Angela Rayner, but also David Lammy. That actually also, by the way, all three of the most recent shadow foreign secretaries, so all the Labour shadows, have all voted against Trident. Now we're supposed to believe that they've had this clean version. Suddenly they highly believe in our nuclear defence, and it just won't work, because we know most of them were members of CND. Many of them members of CND. We know that they've campaigned against our nuclear deterrent. I don't feel it's safe in their hands as a result.
Many voters might feel that the nuclear deterrent isn't safe in the hands of many opposition MPs, but they might not also believe the Conservative Party. Clearly, there is a rift on the right of politics. It's been a growing gap that's definitely deepened today with Nigel Farage's candidature. I want to ask you a question that Jacob Rees-Mogg, the regular host of this programme, posed 2 weeks ago. Let's listen to this.
Help of Nigel Farage in a Conservative government as a Conservative minister, with Boris Johnson probably returning as Foreign Secretary and welcoming the likes of Ben Habib and Richard Tice into our party, as well as pursuing genuinely Conservative policies, winning the next election suddenly becomes within reach.
Grant Shapps, was the Prime Minister wrong to not take Jacob Rees-Mogg's advice to not seek a deal with Reform UK?
Well, look, it's very simple, actually. The Conservative Party, I've been chairman of it in the past, so I know the rules, which is anyone can be a member, but you cannot be a member party whilst you belong to a different political party, whilst you stand candidates in elections to compete. So, I mean, it's a very, very simple principle. I was asked this question, by the way, numerous times 10 years ago when I was party chairman, and I was always being asked, why don't we just somehow, allow people who are not currently members of the party and are a member of a different party into the party? And the answer is, of course, you can't. You can't do that in a political party. You have to have boundaries. And now people are free to join, but they can't join whilst they belong to a different party at the same time.
Now, I want to ask you about some of the polls that have been released in the last few days. They show a historic defeat for the Conservative Party. Some indeed show you losing your seat. And there was a journalist on another channel who was taking a call from you live on television in a quite extraordinary way. How did you respond, firstly, to the idea of you losing your seat, but secondly, to that journalist? You put the phone down on him.
And so, first of all, on my seat, look, every time I'm up for election, I accept that, I fight for every single vote. And interestingly, there was a vote just last month in Welland Hatfield, which is my seat, where if that had been a general election, most likely I would have won the seat. So actually, rather than looking at opinion polls, I'm rather more minded to look at actual votes cast in the ballot box, which, as I say, I think based on that, would have had me returned. And then secondly, I wasn't aware that calling so the Sky had turned into, which was that other broadcaster, a sort of version of Michael McIntyre's Big Show, where you call in and you're suddenly live on air. I'm not quite sure what Ofcom would have to say about that. I actually happened to be on that programme later anyway, so I look forward to catching up with them. But I didn't think that was an entirely appropriate way to handle a phone call.
I have to ask, will you be taking his calls in the future?
Only if he calls whilst I'm on GBNews and I can put him straight on air with you.
Grant Shapps, Defence Secretary, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.